Good evening, welcome to my channel. My name is David Okun. I've been talking about the cost of living. I've also been talking about the capitalism. I said capitalism is the primary cause of the cost of living. Therefore, if you want to solve the problem of cost of living, you need to know why it is happening and then understand your options. This video is attempting to open your mind and really your understanding of what is involved with the cost of living as a problem, but also as a crisis, specifically the help with the government, which I'll be talking about. I actually talked about it briefly in the opening stages of this project 1 month ago. Start watching my video, you might find something interesting. The best thing to do is actually for now to try to get help online. It's so important to understand how to use the internet. Online, you find sometimes telephone contacts, sometimes you find addresses or places you need to visit or how to book an appointment, what to expect and what not to expect. Sometimes you check in the UK, you check if you might be eligible for help. Every help provided by the government has got something called eligibility criteria. If you're eligible, you can check online by yourself. I mean, it's called empowerment. We, in this modern world of capitalism, we are actually seeking to empower those who used to depend on the state. The government is trying to empower its citizens to act independently of the state. Leave a comment below how you feel about empowerment. If you are left alone to do things yourself, sometimes you're left alone to fend for yourself and see how far you go. But if you're poor, it's going to be tough. Life is tough. That's why I feel watching this video can help. Supporting this video might help. I think it will help. I mean, if you don't get all you want, it gives you an idea what to do. You can look for information from the government website and from all the other websites. There are some private companies, there are some voluntary charity organizations in the UK, Europe, in the developed world, in the Middle East, and in Africa. Africa, like I said, is always different. You have land, produce food, and if you don't know how to use the land, learn it. If you're a young person, the best way to live a life is actually to work. And those who are actually abroad, try your best to start voluntary organization, use online resources to raise money to help Africans. Because African governments might not be able to help. Because the way African governments are funded through the IMF and the World Bank is that they are actually not supposed to help people because they're already operating under capitalism. Under capitalism, you're not supposed to help anybody. Everyone should help themselves. And that's why, because we'll talk about change from a country where the government used to help people across the globe, including in Africa. Africa gets its funding from Europe, mainly IMF and the World Bank are in Europe. So they tell African governments what to do with their money. Because if you lend money to somebody, you tell them what to do with the money. You are not, Africa is not independent as a continent. So are we. Because the IMF also financed Britain. Leave a comment below if you think I'm wrong or if you think I'm right. Because I think if you borrow money, then you most likely you're borrowing it from the IMF and the World Bank, and they put conditions on you. Even Britain, even developed country, you cannot do something the IMF say you should not do. If it tells you to invest its money in building capital and infrastructure, which is what the UK is doing now, that is what you do. The bank is telling the world what the world should do with its money. Build capitalism. Do not build socialism, which is, in our understanding, is public sector based kind of like state management of the world. That's where help comes from. Help for poor people. So capitalism is actually a rich man's estate. Get rich quickly. How you do it is your problem. Whatever help you get now, get it. Whatever help you don't get now, don't get it. But get help from the government. Free money with they give, they call it free money. Call it anything you like. We call it benefit in the UK. Call it anything you call in your country. Find out what it is. But what I say, people should learn to do things for themselves. Learn to do business. Small business if you are small. Medium business if you are medium. Big business if you're big. Big means if you are wealthy. Medium if you say you are not really wealthy, you are not really poor, but you are just about there. And small means you are not wealthy, but you are able to use whatever little you have, even to just open a shop or a restaurant, or just learn how to play piano and teach other people to play piano so that you can be paid. That is a small business. You get paid for your service, for your skills. A guitar or any other instrument. If you're a dancer, if you like dancing, if you're still young, if you can learn how to dance and train people how to dance so that they pay. If you're a singer, you can teach people how to sing. I don't know what you can do. I mean, whatever you want to do, you're free. Because capitalism is about freedom. You're free from the state. The state is no longer telling you what to do in theory. In practice, it still does because we're still under the rule of law. And the policies we have still instructs us what to do, what not to do. Although we are free, we are not really free, but we are free. So take your pick. We are talking about capitalism. We're looking at some material. We're looking at the history of capitalism now. The reason we're looking at capitalism, I think capitalism is the main reason there is a cost of living. To solve a problem, you need to understand the problem. So understanding the capitalism is part of the cost of living will, will assist you in solving problems. Every problem has to be solved. Problems don't go away. That's why I'm talking. You talk, you start the process of solutions. You have to be responsible for your life. Support this channel, subscribe for this channel if you haven't subscribed. Thank you if you have subscribed. Thank you if you're supporting it. Continue supporting it. Continue talking about the channel. If you think it is important, I think it is important. If it helps you in some way, get what you can and use it to get help from somewhere else. Because there are so many channels, there are so many websites. It's your responsibility. That's what I choose to do. I will be developing this channel going forward. It's going to be full of information because I'll be looking at information and sharing with you on the screen. That's my purpose. This will now talk about the cost of living. Tomorrow maybe because about something else. Maybe there's nuclear war somewhere. I may be talking about nuclear war. Let us pray that there should be no nuclear war or any war at all. Let us also pray that the war in Ukraine should stop. So the history of capitalism, according to Amit S. Hosseini, the power of supply and demand was discussed to some extent by several early Muslim scholars, such as 14th century Mamluk scholar Ibn Taymiyyah, who wrote, if desire for goods increases while its availability decreases, its price rises. We say supply and demand. So people actually were aware, they have been thinking about capitalism, they have been looking at it, they have been studying it, they have been really recording things. People have been really busy. Capitalism didn't just start yesterday. This has been something going on. in history, and so many great and not so many great people talked about it. So here we are. On the other hand, if availability of good increases and the desire for it decreases, the price comes down. If somebody wants your thing, so many people want your thing, the price goes up because the demand goes up. If fewer people want your thing, it doesn't matter what it is. People really like your thing, they don't really like it anymore. The prices go down. Adam Smith. Leave a comment below if you know who Adam Smith is. I think he was an economist, a well-renowned one as well. Leave a comment below if you know Adam Smith. John Locke's 1691 work, Some Considerations on the Consequences of the Lowering of Interest and Raising of the Value of Money, includes an early and clear description of supply and demand and their relationship, talking about the same thing. It's Adam Smithian. In this description, demand is rent. The price of any commodity rises or falls by the proportion of the number of buyers and sellers, and that which relates to the price of goods is nothing else but their quantity in proportion to their rent. Rent is actually the cost of a product. Cost of goods and services, call it rent. We understand it in housing now. If you are renting, if you're actually occupying a property and you're paying for it regularly, it's a condition of staying in it. You're renting it. You can rent a car, but this is actually a generic term. Pay for something, you're renting it. Although now in modern times, this term may be valid in certain contexts. David Ricardo titled one chapter of his 1817 work, Principles of Political Economy and Taxation, on the influence of demand and supply on price. In Principles of Political Economy and Taxation, Ricardo more rigorously laid down the idea of the assumptions that were used to build his ideas of supply and demand. In his 1870 essay on the graphical representation of supply and demand, Fleming Jenkins, in the course of introducing the diagrammatic method into the English economic literature, published the first drawing of supply and demand curves therein, including comparative statistics from a shift of supply or demand and application of the labor market. The model was further developed and popularized by Alfred Marshall in the 1890s textbook Principles of Economics. We have different types, which we will talk about and look at it just to complement our topic and our discussion, to support our discussion to our idea as to what different elements of capitalism look like. We're looking at supply and demand, looking at its historical perspective, looking at different types as in this material. There are many variants of capitalism in existence that differ according to country and region. So we have different perspectives from different countries and regions. They vary in their institutional makeup and by their economic policies. The common features among all different forms of capitalism is that they are predominantly based on the private ownership of means of production and the production of goods and services for profit, the market-based allocation of resources and accumulation of capital. They include advanced capitalism, corporate capitalism, finance capitalism, free market capitalism, mercantilism, social capitalism, state capitalism, and welfare capitalism. We looked at this previously. We're looking at this in turn, advanced capitalism, and is of interest and to support what we are trying to talk about. Looking at different types of capitalism. These are actually more academic than practice, like we said. At this current situation, as we are under, the kind of capitalism we can recognize is the one involving free marketization. Advanced capitalism is the situation that pertains to a society in which the capitalist model has been integrated and developed deeply and extensively for a prolonged period. Various writers identify Antonio Gramsci as an influential early theorist of advanced capitalism, even if he did not use the term himself. In his writings, Gramsci sought to explain how capitalism adapted to avoid revolutionary overthrow that had seemed inevitable in the 19th century. So you can see that some of the features of capitalism arose as a political, infrastructural strategy to avoid certain either impending, emerging, or real threat to the state. At the heart of his explanation was the decline of raw coercion as a tool of class power, replaced by use of civil society institutions to manipulate public ideology in the capitalist favor. We discussed this aspect previously, that the need to ameliorate a threat to governments gave rise to certain types or facets of capitalism. Jürgen Habermas has been a major contributor to the analysis of advanced capitalistic societies. Habermas observed four general features that characterize this advanced capitalism. Number one, concentration of industrial activity in a few large farms. Number two, constant reliance on the state to stabilize the economic system. Number three, a formally democratic government that legitimizes the activities of the state and dissipates opposition to the system. Number four, the use of nominal wage increases to pacify the most restless segments of the workforce. So we have discussed this in previous materials. We look how politics interplayed with economy and therefore being responsible for other aspects of capitalism, but the original intention of capitalism at the outset was intended to concentrate wealth in the hands of the ruling class. But other elements of capitalism were introduced. For example, in terms of labor, I've said from before that capitalism does not create jobs. They create jobs because they need people to work for the industry. In terms of wage negotiations, this is actually to use as a negotiation tool for the workers, so that to bring temporary peace while capitalist strengthens its position. Because if you see that workers are becoming stronger because there are many, then you introduce certain things to make them happy. You negotiate. If your opponent, if your enemy is strong, or becoming even as strong as you are because of number. In this case, the working class are actually the majority. You can bring the capitalists down. So you find there are different mechanisms people have been using to actually modify capitalism and its extreme forms. So we introduce different types. But now, because of technology, because of the complexity of society and cultural weaknesses, capitalists are back with a vengeance, and they're winning at the expense of the many. The few are actually winning at the expense of the many. The warfare is actually intensifying in favor of the few rulers as against the many who are actually can be seen as people who are ruled over. I mean, if you are being ruled over, it's very easy to look at yourself as a slave, which I would say what we now call citizens are actually not citizens. If you're poor, you are not. You cannot be a citizen if you're poor. In my opinion, leave a comment below what you think. If you think you're a citizen and you don't have money and you are controlled by capitalists, capitalists are actually the rich, the super rich, the few, not the many. That is what I said at the outset of this series, in this conversation, in this series, in this video. We continue to talk about it now in fair details, and we're looking at something called corporate capitalism. Talk about corporatization, which means big, big organizations, big companies. They really, their power has actually increased. The superpower in terms of economic monopoly. We talk about crony capitalism and state monopoly capitalism. I don't know what that is. Says corporate capitalism is a free or mixed market capitalist economy characterized by the dominance of hierarchical bureaucratic corporations. I will talk about finance. I will talk about corporatization in the past. Watch the other videos, and it means power. It means more power. It actually means more money. It means those who actually dominate, like big banks, big insurance companies, airlines. Think of some of really really big things like Google. Okay, corporations like Google. These are really superpowers of the economic age. This is what they call corporate economic superpower. Corporate means really, really, really the apex of capitalistic advantage. You're so rich that you even control the government. Government listen to you. You decide what the government should do. That's what is now happening. That's why we are now in the corporate age of the economic capitalism. Finance capitalism is the subordination of processes of production to the accumulation of money, profits in a financial system. And in their critique of capitalism, Marxism and Leninism both emphasize the role of finance capital as the determining and ruling class interest, as the determining and ruling class interest in capitalist society, particularly in the latter stages. Rudolf Iferding Rudolf Iferding is credited with first bringing the term finance capitalism into prominence through finance capital, his 1910 study of the links between German trusts, banks, and monopolies. Um, a study Study subsumed by Vladimir Lenin into imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, 1917, is analysis of the imperialist relations of the great world powers. It's quite similar to what we've been talking about. It's about power relations in terms of capitalism. And as we look at this material, we also reflect in what we already said, and we continue to look at this material, and just lost it. There we are, and so yeah. So what we say in effect, looking at what Lenin thought, Lenin concluded that the banks at that time operated as the chief nerve centers of the whole capitalist system of national economy for the for the Comintern founded in 1919. The phrase dictatorship of finance capitalism became a regular one. I talked about slave master relationship between the capitalist and the population, the normal population. I talked about slave master relationship. This is similar to what these people are trying to talk about. Fernand Braudel would later point to two earlier periods when finance capitalism had emerged in human history with the with the Genoese in the 16th century, and with the Dutch in the 17th and the 18th centuries. Although at those points it developed from commercial capitalism. Giovanni Arrighi extended Braudel's analysis to suggest that a predominance of finance capitalism is a recurring long-term phenomenon whenever a previous phase of commercial industrial capitalist expansion reaches a plateau. When it climaxes, when it really grow and become really the climax of its performance, then things begin to talk about free market, laissez-faire. We talked of that previously. We're looking at this material to try and actually comment complement what we said already. Laissez-faire, which is a common terminology to many. If you know what laissez-faire is, leave a comment below. Let us know what you think. So, like I've been saying, we're looking at this material to complement what we had said before, and have a thought, have a reflection. We will continue with this material to look and actually connect to what we said about capitalism, to connect with what we said about the cost of living in the beginning of this series. In the videos, we've said everywhere as much as we can to actually establish a view that the primary cause, the cost of living, is capitalism. Thank you for viewing my videos. Thank you for subscribing if you haven't subscribed, and continue supporting this video. Thank you. See you in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.